These videos are mainly aimed at the people taking up this art of wood turning, and I call it art because I don't consider it a craft. But I know it's supposed to be on the skew chisel, but the tool rest can influence the way that the chisel is used. So it'd be remiss of me not to mention something about tool rests. Now, tool rests are the bane of my life. I tend to make my own so that I get the shapes that I want. But some of the manufacturers don't have a clue on what a tool rest for a wood turning or a spindle turning lathe should look like. They're all modelled after pattern makers' lathes, I'm convinced, where you do a lot of scraping. So if you own carbide tools, don't worry about the tool rest too much, you can use whatever you like. Now, I've got various tool rests here, and I'll point out their shortcomings. The first one is off that. Isn't this a brilliant piece of engineering? A piece of pressed steel like this, there is no way on earth that you can get a chisel even close to the work held in the proper position. It's pivoting right back here, which is 3 inches off the work. Now, remember I said that wood turning is a little bit of physics. It's all to do with leverage. You have a load down here, you have force down here, and you have a fulcrum here. And the tool rest forms an important function. It holds the tool. Some people call it a hand rest, but it's not. You don't rest your hand on it and then sit the tool on top of it. The tool sits on the rest, down like that. So the shape of it is important. This one would be totally useless unless you're doing scraping, and that's the only use it would ever have, because it's got a nice flat surface up here. So we'll discount that one. The next one, also of a similar breed of lathe, it's not a bad shape, but it is that sharp along this edge here that you just about slice your finger on it. You can't really get your finger under it, but you'll notice where the pivot point is, it's right back here. So there's a huge gap in underneath here. Again, so you're moving further away, increasing the leverage effect of the timber on the tool. Now, just a small point, on the cheaper lathes they have a cast iron rest. Now, I have no qualms with cast iron rests, provided they are well made. But I'm tired of looking on Facebook and various other forums where people have snapped these, and they all seem to come from the same country. And it's even worse when people put an extension in here that's supposed to be used for outboard turning, and they're using it for spindle turning, so the tool rest is sitting miles away from where its strongest point is. So if you're going to use these rests, don't use the extension on it for spindle work, just use the rest itself. And when you can get a decent one, buy a decent rest or have one made. They don't cost that much. Right, now we'll get on to some reasonably shaped ones. This is the original Texture tool rest. Now, because we do heavy work, as you can see, it's bent a bit. It's actually bent over the thing. These aren't bad tool rests. At least you can get your fingers down behind. They have the pivot point fairly close to the work, and you can run your hand along there with your finger or in an overhand grip with your palm like that. I don't know what breed of lathe this one came off, but it's not a bad shape. It's wide enough that you can get your hand down along it. It's close enough that the pivot point is there, but as you can see, it's just about pinching my finger in underneath there to get the correct angle on the tool. So it's too steep down here. This is the Woodfast Woodworking Solutions tool rest. Again, it's cast iron, but it's good quality cast iron. I've never seen one of these snap. And you have plenty of room to get your hand in, your finger in underneath there, or in the case of an overhand grip, your hand along there like that, or your finger in here like so. Now this is not come on. This is a shape used on a popular lathe, whose name I won't mention, but it was the worst designed thing ever made, as far as I was concerned. You can't get your fingers down in underneath here. This isn't off that particular lathe, by the way, this is just similar to it. You can't get your fingers down here. The pivot point is right back here, over the thing. Had they done that chamfer off here on the back side of it, down along there, it would have been much, much better. In fact, funnily enough, these actually work better back to front, like so. So you've got your pivot point away from the wood just a little bit, half an inch or so, but it's up fairly close, and you've got plenty of room to move your hand in underneath there, or in an overhand grip like so. Now, as I said, this is my preferred shape, with a vertical face down along here. You can get the tool up against the thing, you've got plenty of room for your fingers underneath, or in the case of an overhand grip, you can run your knuckle along there or the palm of your hand. And that's why I like vertical rest for spindle turning. Plus it's nice and narrow, you can get it in as far or as close to the work as you need to get it. It's got clearance in behind here so that the timber can rotate around there. Okay, let's have a look at these various rests and see how they go against the timber now. So, most books you read say to set it 3mm apart from away from the timber down here. That's about there. Let's see where the pivot point comes now. This is the Technitool rest, virtually flat across the top. Not too bad here. Fingers are a bit tight in underneath there if you're using the chisel in the normal way, but it's got the width here so that you can get your fingers down underneath there, or in an overhand grip there's plenty of nice space there to run your hand along. So they aren't a bad rest actually. The pivot point down in here is about half an inch away from the timber. Now, or 13mm if you want to go metric. That's not bad. I like about 10 to 13mm away from the timber. So they're not a bad rest, straight off. This is the Woodworking Solutions one, or the Wood Fast rest, fitted on stubbies and things like that. Again, if you have it 3mm away from the edge, down in here, the pivot point is about 13mm away again, so that's not too bad. And there's room to get your hands in underneath, except the little knobby bit here sometimes gets in the way when you've got the chisel down a fraction. But not a bad rest. The only improvement that I would make to these is to polish that up a little bit, just to get rid of the roughness off the casting. Now, as I said, this is similar to a well-known lathe, and in my opinion, a bad rest. I'm pleased to see that on their new ones, they have a completely different shaped rest, which is far better. But as you can see, the pivot point is right back here. It's nearly an inch away from the timber. If you roll it over, you get a double whammy. Like if you're rolling a bead or something, you came over, suddenly the angle of the chisel changes rapidly and you're likely to have a dig in because of it. It would have been far better if they just cut that down there, reversed it around like I said before. Now we get on to my preferred rest. Now the problem with this is that if you get it 3mm away from the timber, like that, it leaves you no room at all for manoeuvring here. If you're doing a cove or a bead or something and you get down too far, the actual bevel of the tool can be down over the edge here and it will run off. So again, I move it out to about 10-12 millimeters, just enough so that I can virtually fit my finger down in there to the first knuckle. And gee, guess what? The pivot point comes to ½ inch away, 13 millimeters, ideal. And I've got plenty of room for my fingers to slide in underneath there, or in the overhand grip, fingers under like that. Overhand grip I can use either my little finger or my palm of my hand like that. So tool rest shape and placement is important for all the work you do. Right, now talking of placement, once the banjo and everything is locked in, the only thing that you can move is the tool rest. Now, the tool rest height is set for a number of reasons. It is adjusted to suit your height so that you're comfortable standing at the lathe. If you get the tool rest too high, you end up with a sore back. If you get the tool rest too low, you've got to have the chisel handle down around your knee somewhere. So I like to sit it on my hip or near my hip, because I'm lazy and don't like moving things around much. Now remember, I said that you cut just above the centre line. So here's our centre line through here, and there's our mark there. It should be cutting around about there when you're feeling comfortable on the thing. Now, other factors that govern where that tool rests go is the diameter of the timber. On bigger timber, sometimes you've got to drop the tool rest down a little bit to get the, otherwise the tool's too far halfway up the thing. The height of the lathe off the ground is also another factor. The thickness of the tool is another factor of where the tool rest goes. If you've got a very thick tool, it needs to come down a little bit to get it onto the right spot. The other thing is, if you're using a scraper, the tool rest should be on centre, or just a fraction below, so that when you're scraping with the handle held high like that, and no, I don't scrape with a gouge, but this is for demonstration purposes only, the tool is actually coming in under centre, so that if it does grab, it pushes it out of the way. Alright, that's just about finished with tool rest for the moment, so we'll get on with the rest of it. Right, now we're going to talk a little bit about the speed of the lathe. You can turn too slowly, or the timber can turn too slowly. Rule of thumb is that you bring it up to vibration level and then back it off. Some timbers prefer to be cut slowly, some prefer to be cut quickly. You judge the speed where you are comfortable with it and where the timber is cutting correctly. If you are going too slow, sometimes it tends to tear out. Some of the harder timbers, Australian timbers anyway, if you go too fast, the chisel doesn't get a chance to bite in. So it is a judgment call. If you're having trouble on some hard timbers, even thin ones, try slowing the lathe down a little bit to let the chisel get a bite into the timber. On softer woods, just be aware that if you go too slowly, you're going to tear it out rather than get a nice finish on it. Now, to answer the obvious question before anybody asks me, let's find out how fast this is actually going. Uh, 1450, which is roughly the rotation speed of a normal electric motor.